Hello, my Juicy Co-Creators. Lilou here on the Juicy Living Tour in amazing London. Oh my goodness, I can't get enough.
Amazing London, of course. Of course it's amazing.
We're going to speak of the universal heart, and I know a lot of co-creators out there watching this channel and all those beautiful interviews, you know, people that have listened to John Vallo Melchizedek, Barbara Max Hubbard, Harvey, we were speaking about it.
Harvey, yeah.
Andrew, yes, and all these amazing people. And you're part of that, my goodness, those teachers that are really about teaching about the heart, the powerful wisdom of the heart. Isn't that quite something? What is really here? What is this?
Well, it's a great mystery, isn't it? The heart. What is the heart? It's the center of who we are, isn't it, Lilou? It's the part of us where our divine spark lies, where our passion exists, where our fire exists, where our caring exists, where our capacity to be loving exists, where our courage exists, where the part of us that stands up for justice in the world exists, where the part of us that wants truth in the world exists. All our humanity lies in the heart. So why our heart is so important is because if we haven't opened to this part of ourselves, and many of us haven't, just because we're born a human being does not necessarily mean we're human. If we haven't opened to this part of ourselves, then we haven't opened to the best qualities of what it means to be human. And that's why there's so much dishonesty and corruption and imbalance and evil in the world. In my book, I talk about the heart as the antidote to work with evil in the world. If we haven't opened our hearts, then we're not properly human. And the sad thing about the life, about the world, is that many of us have not opened our hearts because it's not a given. We're not born with open hearts. In fact, a lot of our society is geared to help us live only in our minds. I mean, at my school, Lilou, we had a motto, mens sana in corpore sano. I was at one of those posh English schools called Harrow, where one was terribly posh, you know, and mens sana in corpore sano means a healthy mind in a healthy body, and no mention of the heart. And at university, I was taught about things. All the knowledge came from outside. I was never shown that there might be knowledge inside my heart. So, yup, in answer to your question, I think it's the most important part of who we are. But we have to work at opening it. We have to work at healing it. We have to work at coming to understand all the many qualities inside our heart. And we have to exercise it, because the heart is a muscle. If I lie in bed all day, my leg muscles are going to atrophy. And most people go around life with atrophied hearts. And you know, Martin Luther King said that people who have atrophied hearts tend to have rigid minds. And it's really interesting that if we look at the conservative forces in the world, those forces that don't want the world to move on, those forces that want to keep the world in the place, you know, in the status quo, all of those forces have rigid minds. And a rigid mind is full of fear, it is terrified of change, and it doesn't want its cozy little status quo interfered with. So that's the importance of the heart.
Your book, I mean, I just love it, because I love when there's a planet and a big heart on the cover of a book. Oh my goodness. And this is called Awakening the Universal Heart, a guide for spiritual activism. So before we get into the whole spiritual activism, let's walk through a closed heart all the way to an open heart, all the way to this universal heart and spiritual activism. Yeah. What does it, so a closed heart looks like what? So that we can identify or not with it.
Well, let's think of an example of someone who has a closed heart. The sort of person who has a closed heart is a lot of serious politicians who are rigid. Well, it's easier. I mean, a lot of people have closed hearts, and
You mean functioning through fear? Is that it?
well, one meets people and you talk to them and they're not authentic. I think when you see inauthenticity, you know, and you see some people who interview people on television, you realize that their smile does not come from the heart. It's inauthentic. They're putting on a show. And I say this because you are a wonderful example of someone who has an open heart. So
Thank you.
So viewers, if you want to know an example of an open heart, just look at Lilou there, because she has a big heart that is brimming open.
Look at my guests. I try to find only guests with an open heart. I find that this is where the juiciest, the most delicious and open and enlightening conversation
Dear
happen.
Lilou, because that's what you attract to yourself. We attract people of our own kind. And I think that we can talk about different levels of consciousness, because what differentiates us, I think, is not our class, our religion, our skin color, our culture, but the level of consciousness. And as I just said to you earlier, when I meet someone who has an open heart, they may come from a totally different part of the world. I've never met them before. I don't know anything about them. Their religion is different, but we speak the same language because there's a recognition of our shared humanity. There's a recognition that we both come from the same ground of being.
Sometimes we even say, "Oh, you're spiritual, you're a soul sister or soul brother," or there's like it's something like part of the same family. Yeah.
Well, we all have souls, but we need to give birth to them. And often where our souls talk to us, Lilou, is inside our hearts. So when we talk about following the heart, I see that as meaning listening to what our soul is telling us that we need to do through our hearts, because that's often the way that we can most, pick up. And our soul is that part of us that knows our destiny in relation to the unfurling of the destiny of the larger planet.
That's why you put your hand on the heart when you want an answer, and you check here. I saw you already doing that, like just putting your hands and kind of questioning the heart. Tell me.
Hey, sort of what's going on? My heart feels quite good talking to you here. Yeah.
So an open heart, does physically the heart actually opens? Is that a spiritual kind of gate? Is that an invisible thing? Or literally there's something chemical that happens?
Well, most of us are only in touch with our hearts if we have heart attacks. In fact, I think the reason why we have so many heart attacks is that it's the only way our heart can remind us, hey, buddy, I exist, and if you ain't going to listen to me, I'm going to attack you. Jung said every part of us we don't own, we turn into an enemy. So for a lot of us, our hearts are our enemy because we don't own them unless there's something physically wrong. So we only deal with the physical dimension of our hearts. And I say there's a metaphysical and emotional and spiritual dimension of our hearts, and that's the part that we need to open. And I teach a lot of seminars, and in my psychotherapy practice is all focused on helping people open the heart. In fact, I've got a seminar, I've got a retreat coming up in Majorca and one in Jamaica in February and March, both exploring the awakening of the heart. And that is very exciting. And I also work with businesses because the corporate heart needs to open. And so many people in business cultures live in a fear-based energy field with sort of managers who are disconnected from themselves, telling them what to do. and pressurizing them, and there's fear and misery, and people feel they have to leave their humanity, behind at home when they go into work. And what I try to do is to help people open up and say, hey, if you're going to have heart in business, you're actually going to make more money.
Is the key to the opening of the heart authenticity, vulnerability, just showing up as it is? What is really cracking? What helps the heart crack open on the spiritual levels?
Well, I studied with a Sufi master called Pir Vilayat Khan, and he said to me, Serge, our hearts have to break before opening. And I thought, nonsense. And then, a few months later, a girl I was in love with, she just left me for my best friend. And my heart broke. And in that breaking open, I realized that my heart was congealed into a position. She left me because I wasn't open really with her. I wasn't sharing my feelings. I was sort of one of those stiff Englishmen, with a cravat, who'd been to a posh public school and all that stuff. So I started off with a pretty closed heart, and actually that experience of having it broken was what started me on my spiritual journey. I realized, hey, I am one of those old fogies who lives in his mind, who is totally disconnected with his emotions and spiritual feelings, and my spirituality was just a sort of conceptual. I was reading books about spirituality, but I wasn't feeling it in my being. And so that experience of that woman leaving me was one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. And it was, yeah.
Yeah, that's what started the reopening of the heart. Awakening is not reopening.
Well, it's not reopening, it's opening for the first time. See, we come in and we go through life, and our culture is not, in the West, is not one that teaches us to be heart-centered. We learn to be ego-centered. And in fact, the less heart, the more ego-centered we are in certain professions, we'll get right to the top. I remember years ago at Geneva Airport, opening Time magazine, and seeing an advertisement for a Swiss bank. It said, Jeune loup, a young wolf, was wanted. That's what they wanted in their bank. So all young wolves, i.e. men without hearts, could apply. And so in order to develop our hearts, Lilou, we often need to go against culture, that we need to stand outside our existing culture.
It takes real courage, huh?
It takes real courage, but not to go for heart is too painful. Because so many people who live heartless existences are not really happy. You see, if we have heart, we can flow with life. We don't need to have huge houses. And I mean, if my heart goes out to you, say, and I'm in relationship with you, I don't need to own you, I don't need to buy you, I don't need to possess you. I can flow with you because my heart knows how to link. But if I don't, I have to buy you, I have to possess you, I have to control you. And so all the controlling and possessing and domination that goes on in the world, politically, economically, in relationships, is all about the fact that the heart is not invited into the equation.
The universal heart, what is that out there, outside of us, inside of us, in ourselves? Okay. Where is it?
The universal heart needs to be invited in. Because the stages in the awakening of the heart, and at first we awaken to just our personal heart. Yeah, hey, I can love the one I'm with, and it's good, and I'll take care of myself, and I'll be more compassionate with myself. But the universal heart is when we open to the sense of a shared humanity, of a shared brother and sisterhood with people whom we've never met. So when the universal heart opens, we have compassion for poor people whom we've never met. We want to do something to help. When the universal heart opens,
spiritual activism all of a sudden is there present, and that's what you call
is there present. Say the Philippines sort of, tragedy just recently. I felt my heart opening, to these poor people who've lost everything, their families, and I felt compassion and love, and so I wanted to do things to help. I did sort of a few things, but not much, because but it's just the feeling. I mean, all I could do was really send sort of, prayerful energies and, a little bit of money. But it's that sense that we're all in it together. I'm not separate from you. And then there's the feeling of existing in the world and being part of the world, because too often we feel separate from the world. What happens to you is sort of separate from me. But the truth is, you and I at this moment are connected, and we're connected through the heart, and we're dancing together in a little dialogue as two friends, and we don't know each other, but at a deeper level we do, because we're connecting through the heart.
So the universal heart is compassionate, is...
Yeah. I think the universal heart is the heart of the world that wants to heal itself. And I think that there's two hearts we need to acknowledge. There's the heart of you and I personally, and there's the species heart. There's the heart of humanity that has evolved through the ages. And just as our personal heart can be wounded, I mean, we may have had a difficult childhood, we may have had a difficult birth or whatever. So the species heart carries the memories of humanity's, the damage that humanity has done to itself over the ages. And that heart needs to be healed as well as our personal heart. Because after all, if we look back at our history, we've raped and pillaged and murdered and and behaved atrociously to our fellow human beings, and we carry those memories, we carry those wounds, and they need to be healed. So if we open the heart, there's a possibility of being able to work not only at healing our personal wounds, but also at healing the species wounds.
There is a certain stage when we feel sad for the world, and we feel kind of some people, it feels to me, are stuck in the sadness of it and not really thinking that they can change the world, or that they can't even be happy because of the misery that happens. I mean, is that part of a stage? Does that mean the heart needs to open further? Because really what's beautiful, I feel, is that we all have a unique expression, and when the heart opens, we really do our role and take our place.
Well, I think that is tuning in to the old thought form that in order to be spiritual, we have to sacrifice. So we aren't allowed to be happy, and you see those sort of cults who sort of flagellate themselves. I think it's the path of flagellation, and I feel that if we open to the heart, we can feel our abundance as we see the pain and the poverty. So we need to bring abundance to the poverty and the sorrow. And I think that it's possible to hold both. You know, when I watched on the news reports of the tragedies in the Philippines, I meditated a lot and I opened my heart and I felt a huge warmth and a bigness. And then I also felt the pain of those people, and I tried to send my abundance to those people. I said, you know, please may love and abundance flow towards them. So I didn't become them. And I think when I work as a psychotherapist and I work with people who are very wounded, I try to feel their wound and touch that part of myself that knows what it's like to be wounded and in pain, but to also open to the deeper part of my heart that is completely abundant. The spiritual heart is not in pain. The spiritual heart is connected to God, and the spiritual heart is able to heal. So it's very important that we try to stay in that abundant place and deal with the poverty around us, emotional, financial, political, spiritual poverty, if we can try to deal with it from an abundant and full place. And that's where the work is, because we have to work at developing that abundance. Often, as I said earlier, through having had our hearts broken in the beginning.
When those events happen, those tragedy, we could when you say pray and sit on it and be with it, it kind of goes through our heart and then back out and transmutes. Is that what's the work that we all kind of ideally would need to do so that the real universal heart is fully present and we can powerfully...
Well, some of us. In my book, I talk about 10 paths of being an activist. And perhaps sort of very briefly, if we've got time, I can just spend, because it's quite interesting. The first way of being an activist is to be a radiator. There we radiate love and goodwill, like Ramana Maharshi. We radiate love. The second is to be an initiator. We initiate projects. We're a mover and shaker. We go into deprived parts and we bring sort of, healing energy into those parts. The third one is to be an agitator. It's the opposite of being a radiator. We go about and we try to wake people up and we say, hey, you're rich. Instead of that Rolls Royce, how about going out and doing something to help people who need help in the world? And so we sort of get people going. The other one is that we're an infiltrator. We go into heartless organizations or sort of heartless people, and we try quietly from within, without appearing to be doing anything, to sow the little seeds. And I do that a little bit when I go into very traditional organizations. I don't, advertise myself as the heart man always, but I try to sow seeds and infiltrate from behind the enemy lines, as it were.
The heart whisperer.
The heart whisperer, yeah. And then there's the proclamator, who is Nelson Mandela or Obama, and we change through the spoken word. So Obama got into the White House because he made people believe that the world would be better. Sort of Martin Luther King's great speech, I have a dream, he made people believe that the liberation he spoke about was possible. So, and then we have and there's other forms that of sort of making a difference, and especially the dissident. and the dissident is an incredibly difficult path. The path taken by Aung San Suu Kyi Suu Kyi in Burma, whose heart was big enough, Lilou, to take on the whole of that evil regime in Burma and to be imprisoned for her beliefs, like Nelson Mandela. And, you know, as a result of what she's done, there's a lot more freedom in Burma at the moment. So there's many, many ways that we can make a difference. There's many ways, but we have to have heart, because that is the great power. And Teilhard de Chardin, the great Jesuit sort of futurist and priest, and he said there's more power inside the awakened heart than inside an atomic bomb. So the heart is our great weapon of mass construction. It's a great weapon that we have here with great power to do good, to bring healing, to create a better world.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. And if you want to read more, I know that you have those amazing retreats in Majorca. I can't wait. Awakening the Universal Heart, a guide to spiritual activism. Thank you so much, Serge. It was such a pleasure to meet you and a delightful conversation, isn't it? Oh my God.
Great to meet you, darling. Thank you, and I wish you well. And we've had a lot of fun together. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to thank you to all beautiful co-creators out there. My goodness. Let's continue to open our hearts. Let's be spiritual activists.
Hey, hallelujah, sister. Let's go for it.
Big, big kisses. Much, much love. Thank you for sharing this video. Thank you for your support. Much love. Bye. Yeah.